Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions. Megan, Kathleen, thank you so much for being our guest on the Mike Litton Experience. Like we talked about before we hit record, everybody has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. So with your permission, we're going to start with where you were born, go all the way up to today. And then we want to talk about this amazing book that you wrote. And we also want to talk about the things that you're doing to help people with regard to what you wrote the book about, right? Because you and I, full disclosure, you and I met on the beach at Sunset Cliffs. You were doing a yoga workshop for one.
Yes.
I'm just joking. But it was cool, and we struck up a conversation about how they used to have yoga classes there and that kind of thing. And the city of San Diego decided to get involved. And it's always, Ronald Reagan once said, the scariest thing in the world is when somebody shows up and says, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
that's
So,
true.
so welcome to the program. It's great to have you. I'm super excited about what we're going to talk about today, because I think it's incredibly important. Two things: that we get your life story on tape, right? And at least for posterity, if nothing else, right? And then also that we get the word out about what it is that you're specializing in and what it is that you're teaching.
Yes, I just want to first thank you for having me. I believe it was so serendipitous that you and I met the way we did, and I really do believe that you attract what it is you are thinking. And I had been thinking, man, I'm a newly published author, right?
Yeah.
My book was just released in January of this year, and it needed some attention. And here I meet you, and I'm like, wow, look at this.
Yeah.
I get the exposure. I'm super grateful, and I think this is just a cool thing.
Yeah.
I am really excited to talk about my work.
We're excited to have you. So real quick, since we mentioned the book, what's the name of it?
Yes, it is the author, me, M.K Rave. It is Skin Crave, Tales of an Addict.
Okay.
I actually have my
Yeah, let's
collection
show
of
it.
books
There you
right
go.
here. There we go.
Perfect. That's what I wanted to do. Okay, so we're going to show that at the end too, and we'll put a link to it in your episode description, so
Okay,
people can click on it and go.
that's great.
So where were you born?
Yes, so I was born in a small farm town in Amarillo, Texas.
I've been to Amarillo.
Yellow. I don't know if you're familiar with the George Strait song, Amarillo by Morning.
Yep. One of my favorite
It,
songs ever. George Strait's one of my favorites ever, and I've been
it's
to
a
Amarillo
good
several times.
jam. It's a good jam,
Yeah, it
and
really is.
it's on the cusp of New Mexico, right? It borders
Yeah.
New Mexico. It's the Panhandle, and so I actually was raised in both places. Born in Amarillo, but most of my life was spent in Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Okay.
Yes, farm and mountain. That
Okay.
was the exposure from a very young age. And I actually ended up traveling with some family members before I started kindergarten. So by the time I was 5 years old, I had already visited like 23 states in the
Wow.
US. Yeah. And I have the old fashioned photo album to show for it.
Yeah.
Every borderline state and the sign that's "Welcome to Missouri, welcome
Right.
to Nevada." There's little Megan just standing in front with a big smile. So
Oh,
it's kind of cool how nomadic I was from such a young age,
yeah.
and to be so cultured that young too,
Yeah, not a lot of people can say they've done that before kindergarten.
Right, right. I think that my family knew just how beneficial it's going to be for my future, because let me tell you, there is nothing like getting out of your old little routine and
Mhm.
your town and educating yourself
Yeah,
with worldly things.
that's what I
Worldly things.
found that's what I found amazing about you. You don't have a lot of fear. Like, you step out of your comfort zone on a regular basis, and that's a very, very cool thing, and it's something that a lot of people need to emulate, I believe.
I mean,
So,
look at me. I got tattoos on my face and
yeah,
piercings in my nose, and I just feel like there's no sense in fearing when you have so much more to gain from taking the risk.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So, did you grow up in Santa Fe, or did you grow up in both places?
Both places, because mom and dad, they divorced when I was young,
Mhm,
and so that's the primary, really, of my book. That seed of childhood and how it kind of blooms or manifests into certain behaviors and personalities, right? And coming from a broken home, it's not ideal, especially because I'm Mexican American, and so there's a lot of culture and tradition there
mhm,
that stuck with me. So being born in Amarillo, raised in Santa Fe, New Mexico, parents were living in two different states, bopped back and forth. It was quite the ping pong ball effect
mhm.
there. And I did get the benefits of, like I said, being cultured in one place and the other. There was a lot to take from it, even though it was kind of a sad story that I didn't have my parents together.
Yeah. It's rough on kids that grow up in a broken home. It's rough, and a lot of people don't understand unless they've been through it.
Right.
A lot of people don't understand that dynamic. They don't understand um, the effect it has on you. And to your credit, you've taken that experience and learned from it, and now you're teaching other people how to deal with it, which is sort of the crux of your book, which is a really cool thing. So
Yeah.
so where did you go to high school?
So I attended Santa Fe High in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I ended up homeschooling the last 2 years of high school because, life took a toll on me with adolescence and a broken home. And, I was a very smart kid, actually.
Mm,
That was, I think, my problem. I wasn't being challenged enough. Unfortunately, New Mexico is one of those states where the education level falls very low on the totem pole, right?
mhm,
It's, I think, number, I want to say 45 in ranking. Um, and it's sad.
mhm.
It's sad when you aren't challenged the way you need to be in order to grow and be in the real world.
Right.
And so, I skipped classes a lot. My teachers were like, she needs to be with maybe seniors. Um, this was my freshman year in high school, and so I got put in a classroom with seniors, and that kind of just made things worse.
Mhm.
I made friends with kids who could get off campus,
Right.
and we're having fun and ditching. And so it was like, yeah, I guess I was being a little more challenged, because here I am 14, 15, and I'm taking an anthropology class, and
Mhm.
I'm in calculus, and I am in creative writing, and all these other classes that really weren't available to me as a freshman.
Right.
And yeah, so my parents were like, well, that didn't work. I mean, I was still getting my homework done, right? I still had really good grades, and the behavior still stuck.
Mm,
So they asked, well, what about homeschool? It seems like you're leaving school to come home.
mhm.
So let's just not do your schooling here. And I was like, all right. And so I ended up homeschooling, and I graduated a year early because of it. And it's
Yeah.
really interesting because there is such a stigma with homeschooling, especially back then. Now, not so much anymore. People almost prefer to homeschool their children,
Mhm.
especially after COVID. And I just remember being the weird homeschool kid, right?
Mhm.
And I actually excelled. It was such a cool platform for me. I was able to interact with students from all over the world because of the homeschooling program that I was using.
Mhm.
So not only did I have the travel from such a young age, it was almost as if I was able to travel via internet, right? And the World Wide Web, and I had other people teaching me my curriculum.
Yeah.
And so I learned from a young age that it wasn't so much people who were in authority over me, such as teachers, that were my teacher. My fellow students were my teachers.
Mhm.
And it was really cool because after that I did the college thing, but I feel like the real juice of my education and like the pivotal moment of what made me want to pursue my dreams as a respected author and writer was realizing that there's a school out there money can't buy. My parents did want to set me up for success, right? They were like, we need you to be educated. You're Mexican American. You already have something going against you, right? Culturally speaking, I feel we grew up very whitewashed.
Mhm.
Um, don't even really like that term, but for a lack of a better term, there was just nothing safe about embracing our Mexican lifestyle. So we always had to overachieve to prove ourselves by being a family of color.
Mhm.
And yeah, so I was like, okay, well, mom and dad have very buttoned up jobs. They aren't really teaching myself or my siblings Spanish. They want us to be looked at in a certain way. And I picked up on that very young. But I still had that little rebel in me that was like, I don't want to conform. And I feel that they see that. And so they were like, well, what do you want to do? And I wanted to study the arts, right?
Mhm.
It's like I didn't want to pursue my family's line of farm living, or I didn't want the office job either. I wanted to study art. And as you can see, just I've got art all over me. So
Mhm.
being artistic was just the most amazing decision I could have made for myself and to pursue that art, right? Everything from music to acting and dancing and modeling. I just loved it all. And yeah, that kind of took me places. That was the pipeline into meeting people who could kind of bolster my dreams, right?
Mhm.
Little did I know that writing was the ultimate art for me.
Mhm. That's cool. Okay, let's go back for just a second. In
Yeah.
high school, did you have a favorite subject?
My creative writing class.
There you go.
Yeah, my creative writing class, and I was not aware how talented or gifted I was.
Mhm.
I really just didn't take it seriously, even though I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And my teacher, Mr. Davis, which I ended up seeing later on in life, and told him, "Hey, I'm still writing." And had a booth at a farmer's market, and he was just like, "I knew you would, right?"
Mhm.
So there's that vat confidence there. But yeah, it was creative writing. I really enjoyed pen to paper.
That's cool. So growing up in Santa Fe, what was your favorite thing about growing up there?
I would have to say the deep culture of, the Spanish conquered there in Santa Fe, and there's this blend of Native American and Spanish influence. So I love both sides of the coin there. I
Mm.
mean, there's just so much history. It's, an art capital, right? One of the oldest capitals, and I love how beautiful it is there. I mean,
Mhm.
it's mountains. New Mexico is a unique place.
I
So
agree with that.
yeah, so there was a lot to learn, and when you slow down long enough to notice, it grew on you.
Yeah. So who was the most influential person to you growing up?
I mean, that's quite the question. I mean, I feel like everyone I came into contact with had such impact on me that they say nothing's ever original. It's always just ideas taken from
Mhm.
somebody else. And I feel like there's like this culmination of people, right? That I'm like, I want to be like them. And I want to be like them. Everyone from, my best friend growing up to, uh, my parents or a teacher or even um, a famous person, an
Mhm.
actress, right? And I think I would have to say a single person would probably be my childhood friend because I loved my parents. I just didn't want to be like them.
Yeah.
So the most influential person for me at that time would probably have been my friend Joy.
Okay.
She introduced me to a whole slew of things that I had never seen or understood before.
Right. So you graduate from high school a year early, which doesn't surprise me at all, because one of the things that I noticed about you when I first met you was how intelligent you are and how articulate you are. And usually when you have somebody with your level of intelligence and your ability to articulate, they typically feel constrained in a public school system. Like actually going to public school, they feel like I'm sitting here waiting for everybody else to catch up. And public school almost makes you slow down when you're
Mhm.
that upper echelon of intelligence,
Mhm.
and that gets frustrating. And what happens is you get frustrated and you're like, why am I here? Right? I'm just here with for them to make me slow down. So I'm going to go elsewhere and go do something else. I'm going to put my energy somewhere else. Oftentimes,
Right.
unfortunately, it's getting into trouble, but it's also, it's also indicative of you find a lot of people with higher intelligence and patience issues like me, like ADD and ADHD,
Right.
that kind of stuff, right?
Right.
They tend to wander. They tend to
Yeah.
go do something else, right? Because they
Mhm.
feel stifled.
Mhm.
And that's something that I tried to watch out for in my kids growing up,
Right.
trying to make sure that they had an opportunity to excel.
There's this institutionalization,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, there you go.
yeah.
I also, Spanish and English,
Yeah.
when I try to blend them, it may not always come out
Well, no, you said it
as
right
you're
because
supposed to
you
pronounce
said it
it,
right
but
because what it is it's the system, right? The
mhm,
system caters to the people that are lower in intelligence, and it's constantly trying to bring them up. What it's not doing is it's not letting the people with the higher level of intelligence at the top of the curve,
mhm,
it's not letting them take off, right? It's
right,
basically saying, okay, you have to slow down. And that
right,
slowing down part, right, gets frustrating, especially when you have somebody who, like you, who has a higher level of intelligence and wants to use it, right?
right, right,
You wanted to go learn more. And that's why
right,
they identified early on that you should get into classes with seniors,
right,
okay? And
yeah,
being you, you're able to get along with everybody, right? Because
right,
you have
right,
an ability to articulate and conversate, right? And
right,
so all of a sudden they throw you into this group with seniors so that you don't feel as stifled. And then the
right.
seniors get a hold of you and they're like, "Hey, let's go."
I completely agree with you. There is this just block that
Yeah,
kind of happens for us, overthinkers or people like you said with
yeah,
ADD or ADHD or any kind of buzz. I like to call it the buzz, right? Because that is the way my brain is wired, and
yeah.
it should be respected a little more.
Well,
I
I think respected, but I also think catered to, right? Because
exactly catered
Because
to and respected.
as much as they're bringing the lower 25% or trying to bring the lower 25% up, they need to be looking at the upper 25% and saying, okay, how can we bifurcate this so that we're appealing here and we're lifting these people
Right,
up, but we're not pushing these down. You know what I mean? And
right,
that's
right.
that's one of the
And
biggest challenges with the public school system is you've got
well,
one teacher,
one
45
teacher
kids, right?
who are all like
Yeah.
this and
Yeah.
not the
And
what
it's the
I like
same
to call a
curriculum for
flat
everybody.
line.
Yeah.
I feel like they kind of make everyone flatline,
That's it. That's
and
exactly it.
it's really unfortunate. But because I knew that I no matter how hard I try and tried back then, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And
Yeah.
even today, there's this joke that goes around in my family. Everyone tells me that, Megan, you have to be the CEO of your own business and your own life. Basically, you got to be your own boss because you really just don't work well with authority or like I it's not, in my opinion, it's not that I don't work well with it. I just challenge people. And I believe if that challenge comes off as an offense, do I
Yeah.
really want to be in this industry, or do I really want to be a part of whatever it is you're working at, as a collective? Like I'm not one who, I advocate for people, like as just a volunteer gig, but I constantly am advocating for myself of like, but let me challenge that for a minute.
Hmm.
And I know that in my past life, being in a profession where I could argue and
Hmm.
get paid for it, not a lawyer, but just, challenge people. I feel like properly, I probably would have been at the top of my game in that career
Yeah.
slot because I love provoking thought.
Yeah.
That is just, and honestly, that is what words are.
Hmm.
If you give people some context, let them think.
Hmm.
Let them think. Let
Yeah.
them freely think, and then we'll circle back around and talk about it.
Well, and that's a leadership test. Okay.
Mhm.
You're
Right,
testing leadership, and leadership's failing you. Okay. Leadership needs to be able to work with all comers. It
right.
doesn't matter what their behavioral style is. It doesn't matter, they need to be able to work with and morph to, right, adapt to that, adapt their leadership style to whomever that person is that they're leading. And so what
Yeah.
happens is leaders basically get into the fetal position, crawl in the corner, right? Because they don't have an answer for you. Either
Right.
you do what they say when they say it, and then they're right all the time, or they just simply cannot lead you. And that's just
Mhm.
ridiculous. Okay.
Right.
That's
Right.
not leadership.
No,
That's just somebody
it
that's keeping a
and
chair
it's
warm.
harmful. It is
It
harmful.
absolutely is.
And I think one of the things I love to bring to people's attention is that very thing. Like, what is the harmful core belief that is
Yeah.
being taught,
Yeah.
right? Because it's, I get it. You can't squeeze toothpaste back in the tube, but
Right.
what are we going to do moving forward to help people unlearn it and then have the wherewithal to learn something new? Because by
Yeah.
that point, people are fed up, especially young minds,
Yeah.
right?
When you
It's just
lose them,
like
you lose them.
you and oh man, is
And
it hard?
it takes more effort by far to get them back.
Right,
Right?
absolutely.
Once you've lost them, it takes a lot more to get them back. And a lot of times the system just goes, sorry,
Mhm.
right?
They wipe their hands
Yeah, you
clean
have
of it.
behavioral issues. Bye bye. Right? I mean, come
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. And and
So,
and don't get me wrong, I respect those who aren't on such a high frequency, right? That
mhm,
feel like they are struggling and can't keep up, and it's not about pushing them to the side or putting them on the back burner. No. By all means, like, let's give that some attention too, but that can't be the sole reason for why everyone else goes unattended.
yeah. No, I agree
And
with that. I agree
and
with
so
that.
I feel like that is kind of what happened to me, being a firstborn. And then, all right, Megan, you're on your own, right? Like,
Mhm,
I don't think we have to attend to you anymore. My parents knew I was smart. They knew I was capable. They knew that I was gonna go against what they were saying, right? So they kind of just let me spread my wings and fly. And there definitely should have been some supervision. You know what I'm
mhm.
saying? Like,
Yeah.
my father was a chief of police.
Mhm.
Imagine that. um, I don't know if you've ever heard how police officers and pastors' children, they're the most wild. I wanna say that that's true.
Mhm.
I feel like I was such a wild child. No matter how much I was educated on, like, hey, this is dangerous, or hey, don't do this, or hey, I've seen it and you don't want to see it, right? It's like I
Mhm.
wanted to go learn for myself.
Mhm.
And let me tell you, Mike, I did.
Well, daughters tend to favor their dads.
Hmm.
Okay. Doesn't surprise me at all that your dad was in a leadership position.
Right.
Okay. Because the way he got to be in a leadership position was he was willing to take risks. Duh. That's exactly the way you're made.
Right. Right.
What made him successful and allowed him to differentiate himself from all the other police officers out there and become leadership, okay, is exactly the same thing that made you go out and test the limits. It's exactly what he did. He tested the limits, but because he tested the limits in the police department, everybody said, "Oh, that's fine. He's obviously a leader. Let's ordain him, right? Let's make him the chief."
He gets the badge of honor. I get the finger, right?
Correct.
Like, don't you dare.
Correct.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
pastors are the same way. Pastors are the same way. I had a pastor who's one of my best friends still today. Okay. I had a pastor turn to me and he said, "Mike, humans are messy." And he said, "Let me tell you something. Vast majority of them are sheep. Vast majority of them are sheep. And your job is to be the wolf." Right?
Absolutely.
That's a pastor's kid. Think about it. The pastor is the leader, right? The pastor passed those qualities on to their children, okay? And their children don't necessarily see the church as the authority that the pastor espouses it to be, because they see all the faults, they see all the messiness behind the scenes, right? Does that make sense? And so
it makes perfect sense.
So now all of a sudden, and you did the same thing, you saw the messiness behind the law.
I was just about to tell you. I think that's why I'm so candid.
Yeah.
Because let's address the mess.
Yeah.
I want to address the mess, and it takes some finesse, right? There's some grace that has to be given when you're telling somebody what the mess is.
Yeah.
And even how you managed to clean it up, if it got cleaned up, or who caused it, who caused the mess, right? And I learned from an early age, if you broke something in the house, everyone's hiding, right? Kids are like, "Oh, we can't be honest," right? Like, we're gonna get in trouble. And it's like, I kind of always was just like, I'm gonna go ahead and take the blame, even though it was my brother. Right. It's like, I'm gonna go ahead and just own up to something, because the quicker I do that, the process of like everything being okay is gonna come faster.
Right.
And everyone is so reluctant to raise their hand, like, "Yep, I made a mess. I messed up." I'm like, let's normalize raising our hands again. Like, yeah, I totally messed that up. Like, let's address it now, right?
Yeah.
But my book it's about a very touchy subject.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people who struggle with addiction, or parents of, that are addicted, a friend, a loved one in general, it doesn't matter if you've ever.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.